Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
My name is Marissa Rodriguez. I live in Athens, Greece now, and I am an e-commerce fractional CMO and COO, and now e-commerce educator, mentor, coach, but basically anything and everything involving e-commerce.
Awesome. So how did you kind of get into the e-commerce space in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So I was working in fashion in New York City. The year is 2007. Back then, I was doing wholesale for like a huge fashion brand, and a lot of the big retailers in America were just starting to get what they were calling like the .coms. So, Bloomingdale's had its .com and Saks and Neiman's. And so I had a little exposure in those really early days, and those businesses were teeny tiny. No one really cared. But I started to get the sense of like, this is where it's going. And the people around me didn't necessarily understand that or feel that way. I mean, I was in a wholesale environment where like the most important thing was like selling into other retailers. But by like 2009, I was like, this is where things are headed. And I understood that I needed to do everything I could to get closer to e-commerce. And so that began a journey of me moving around into different businesses that were wholesalers, retailers, startups, really just trying to grow my understanding of the landscape. And by 2015, I was fully entrenched in direct to consumer and doing none of the other things anymore.
Got it. So I guess like as of today, right? Like you mentioned kind of that you're more of like a CMO or like helping out your clients. So I guess I'm curious, like what's the best use case where somebody can engage in your services and get the most value from working with you?
Well, so now I'm not taking on it. Now I don't work necessarily as a fractional CMO and COO for people. So you can't hire me necessarily in that capacity. What I do though is one of the things that I'm really passionate about in general is that e-commerce has democratized the ability for regular people to create incredible businesses for themselves, right? And incredible wealth. And one of the challenges that I had was, I've helped a handful of businesses generate a lot of money and these founders become multi-millionaires. But there's only so many businesses that I can personally work with, right? And like there's a limit to what I can do. And so I had decided I didn't want to be an agency and open up an agency that just kind of went against with my entire philosophy of D2C. So I began last year, I launched the beginning of my e-learning platform where I decided, okay, maybe I can teach people what I do. I can give them my systems. I can give them my tools, my frameworks, like everything that I've done to go from launch to help businesses get to 20, 30, 40, 50 million in annual revenue. And then there can be an army of people that are capable of doing the same things for themselves. And so now I'm much more about mentorship, coaching, or putting people in through my programs to do and learn the things that I now know through experience.
Makes sense. So, I mean, obviously e-commerce, we're also like in the e-commerce space and like I often get asked about verticals, right? Because there's so many different verticals, so many different types of products. Obviously that your background is more in fashion. So is that kind of what you focus on or do you kind of work across all verticals? I guess, what does that kind of look like for you?
I'm not a product vertical person. It doesn't matter what product category you're selling online. It's the exact same process and the exact same ecosystem that needs to be working for you. I am a D2C person. So maybe because of my background in wholesale and in retail, when I first came into really stepped into e-commerce, what I loved about D2C was the power that it gave you, the self-sufficiency, the idea that if you do it right, you don't need anybody else. You are capable of growing your own business and your own ecosystem. And so I am 1,000% an expert in D2C. I'm not the person to talk to about Amazon. I'm not the person to talk to about, Etsy. I am the person that can help you understand the challenges and the pitfalls of what's going to occur to your D2C business if you have an Amazon, or what's going to occur to your D2C business if you're wholesaling or, dealing with other retailers online. But I would say that less product and more about the D2C ecosystem is the lane that I really thrive in.
Makes sense. And then in terms of like that lane, are you kind of focused on brands that are a bit, more established, have already gotten started, or even do you help brands get started from zero? Because as you said, right, that there's many founders that have been very successful kind of starting from zero. So kind of, yeah, I guess where do you come in and add the most value in that standpoint?
I mean, honestly, at any point in the journey, I've launched a lot of D2C brands from zero. So, founders have hired me to help them get to seven figures in their first 12 months. But then I've also walked into businesses that were maybe already doing 1 million, and within 4 years, now they're doing 30 million, right? So it doesn't matter to me so much where the brand is in terms of its journey. It's really more about, do we have the right founder? Do we have the right conditions? Do we have the right willingness to play the game as it's required? So it's more that whether or not I'm going to be successful has to do with, are we going to play the game the way that it's designed to be played? Or are we going to try to, be upset about it or fight with it or want it to be something that it's not? So does that answer your question? Because I've really come
Yeah.
into all the stages. And I think that that's what makes me really different from a lot of the people out there. I'm not just a CMO. I've had to launch businesses literally from ground zero with founders that had never done this before, that did not know anything about e-commerce. So that forces you to have to understand not only the ops side and the tech side and the customer service side, but also the unit economics, the margins, putting together a forecast of what the business needs to be able to do, right? And so I am a generalist because I've had to, whether I like it or not, survive and get to that next place. And when there's nobody else to do it and you're being hired to do it, you have to develop the skill set very, very quickly.
For sure. And then, so in terms of somebody starting from zero, right? Because I mean, people always reach out to me like, oh, like I want to start a brand. Like so many people want to start a brand. How much money does somebody actually have to invest to get things off the ground? I mean, I know this question kind of varies, but at least like at a minimum from what you've seen.
I always I flip it on people because there's a lot of variables, right? Product costs, like how much does the inventory cost you? Like that, there could be a huge spectrum. So I like to reverse engineer. What do you want to get to, right? So in these businesses that I was just giving you the example that I launched, I had founders who were like, I want to do $1 million in my first 12 months. And I was like, great. From that number, then let's retroactively look at what that means. How much inventory do we need to buy in order to be able to sell $1 million, right? What does that mean then from a paid advertising perspective, right? If we're going to budget 30 to 33% for paid ads, what does that mean for people? So I always want to start with the vision and the goal in mind of what we want to achieve and then build a strategy. When I show them the strategy, if they're like, oh, I can't do that, then I'm like, then you can't hit $1 million in sales. So then we need to change the vision, right? To me, it's like the vision and the strategy have to come together in order for us to be able to do the things that we say that we're going to do.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very good point, especially when it comes to paid ads, because yeah, I mean, it all has to work in sync, right? If you're going to spend $1,000 a month on ads, you're probably not going to get 100,000 a month in sales. It's just not going to happen unless you have some great organic channels, which, is definitely possible, but it's very difficult. So
it is not possible in D2C. In D2C, you are powered by the paid ads ecosystem as much as like everybody would like to tell you otherwise. There's no other way. And so, yeah, there's a cost for, you have to be willing to make a certain investment. And so you have to start with like, what do you want to achieve in sales? And then we need to go build out the plan that can get us there. And we need to be very honest about what those costs are.
yeah, I mean, I think the only exception I've seen, if somebody already has like a following, if they're like an influencer and they're starting a brand, it's a bit easier and they might not need to spend on paid ads as much. But yeah, I mean, typically for 99% of people, that model for sure doesn't work. And then I guess in terms of in 2025, right? I mean, D2C is always changing. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in the market today?
Well, let me just first say something to what you first said. I have launched celebrity brands. I launched a D2C brand for Sofia Vergara in 2017 when she was on Modern Family and was like the highest paid actress on television with a huge social following. I have done influencer collaboration. I have run the gamut on this. And what I tell people is even if you have a huge following, that might get you that first sale, that's not going to get you 10,000 orders. That's not going to get you 100,000 orders. That's not going to get you the repeat purchases. You are going to have to invest and play in the exact same ecosystem that everybody else has to play in. You don't get a free pass because you're a celebrity. And I think that we can acknowledge that if we think of all of the celebrity and influencer brands that have like been born and died, the majority of them, right? Like there's very few Kim Kardashians and Skims. There's many more that have tried that haven't done it well. So I don't think that a huge following is indicative of you being successful in D2C. And I think that sometimes it can hurt because those teams think that that is what you have as like your calling card of the celebrity or the influencer, when online and in D2C, customers are not in market to shop, and the majority of them don't care who you are. They want something that is going to make their life better. They want a solution to their problems. They want a tool, right? That's the kind of messaging that gets people to stop the scroll and click on the ad or click on the email. Anyways, I went on a tangent, but I don't think that a huge social presence or a huge personal brand necessarily equates with success in D2C.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because I was at a speech. It was like a panel over the weekend with Ashley Tisdale, who recently launched a brand, but she was speaking how like her first brand failed. So this is like her second go around. So yeah, I mean, 100%. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be successful because yeah, she was not successful in her first go around. So
well, it's because you still have to play the game.
Exactly.
You still have to get on the court and play the same game that everybody else has to play. And you still have to win the mind share of the person. You have to get the click. You're going to get the click because it's about them, because you're positioning it as a solution for them. And I think that that sometimes is harder for celebrity and big influencers to sort of acknowledge maybe. And they lead with like, but it's me. You should want my new t-shirt brand. And it's like, no, I want to know why this t-shirt is better than every other t-shirt that's out there. Right. Exactly. And so sometimes I think it makes it harder.
Yeah, it's true. No, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely not a guarantee. But it's interesting because I have seen brands that have scaled spending no money on paid ads. So it's like, I guess, I have seen it once again. I'm not saying it's like a super common thing, but I've seen it where brands have even gotten to 25 or 50 million without spending money on paid ad. But I think part of it might have to do with like a combination strategy of D2C versus retail, other channels.
1,000%. It's what you just said, because this game comes at me a lot, right? From a lot of people. They'll be like, oh, so-and-so is doing $20 million a year. And I'll go on to SimilarWeb and I will look up their web traffic. And I'm like, they're doing nothing on the internet. So like, yes, they're doing 20 million a year because they're wholesaling or they have retail partners, but their e-commerce, their D2C business is zero. How do I know it's zero? Because they have 5,000 website visitors a month. So this happens so often in terms of, sometimes I also think that the narrative gets confused. Like if you live and die by your online business and you are truly D2C only, there is no way that you can grow without paid ads. Like there's no other way. Now you can make the choice to be a business that has, like you're saying, multiple different business models and that has D2C as a component, but I can guarantee you that you're not doing a lot in your D2C channel because you need paid ads.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes for any business. I think every business needs some level of paid ads. And I think it's interesting because on this show, when I've interviewed strictly D2C businesses, one of their biggest regrets is not launching paid ads soon enough because they didn't understand like the value of it. They still, obviously had customers organically, but they really started to see good growth once launching paid ads.
If you do it right, if you understand how to do paid ads right, there is nothing more powerful. It is shocking. Like the power of Meta's algorithm in first place, followed by Google, is incredible. And so when they're doing their thing properly and you're watching the right people come to your site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that power, there's nothing more intoxicating, right? Now, you have to be really good in order to get it to work, right? It's like I said, it's like a game, and the whole ecosystem, you need to be hitting on multiple cylinders. But yeah, if this is what I say to people, it's like you spend $3 and you get 10 back, and it's a formula. And you can plan out that formula. And that gives people this power because you have a repeatable, predictable business. You know exactly what you're going to be able to achieve.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess like back to like my earlier question in terms of trends, right? I mean, what are you kind of seeing in 2025 when it comes to e-com?
I think that my experience in e-commerce is that it's actually a lot less trend driven than the industry would like you to believe. I think that there's like an entire marketing engine that's trying to tell you, oh, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. For me and for the businesses that I work on, it's still Meta, Google, and email in like the front runner position. Now, that being said, I think that there's some big shifts that are on the horizon that I don't think are trends that I think might completely alter the e-commerce landscape. Like we're not there yet. But, for example, if people stop going to Google eventually to search and they start searching on an AI platform like Perplexity, that's going to change my ecosystem completely, right? Because that's a huge fundamental shift in the behavior of the users. And so I'm very kind of cognizant of that right now. It's not something that's going to impact my businesses or my clients in 2025. It's definitely, I don't even think something in 2026, but could we be sitting here 24 months from now with like a complete shift to the overall landscape because people aren't going to Google in the way that we're used to them going, and like how that could create a ripple effect? Absolutely. I think that, one of the other things that I don't call it a trend, I just call it more like something that I'm very hyper aware of is Meta is the lion's share of advertising in D2C. Like there's 75% of the advertising that occurs, right? Meta has been playing around with Meta Shops for a while. It's so far like not a big deal. Meta Shops is tiny, right? But if Meta gets their act together and decides that like they no longer want to push traffic out to your D2C website because they just want to keep people on their platform and they want Meta Shops to become a larger part of the ecosystem, that has huge implications for D2C brands, right? Because if the traffic no longer hits your website because people are shopping on the social platform and on Meta, what does that mean for email capture, building your email list? What does that mean for, some of the other revenue generating channels that rely on Meta? So that's also like a big thing in my mind, because I'm like, at some point, Meta might decide, nah, we're not going to send you the traffic. And by the way, we're also going to take transaction fees. And so these are the things where I think there could be huge shifts overall to e-commerce, but I don't care about trends, and I don't put my time and attention on trends because they more often than not, they're like shiny objects that derail you from the actual things that matter.
Right, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's they say I think it's like 80% of what you do is going to be like 20% of your effort, like 20% of. So yeah, I think it's like when you're trying to do too many different things, it's really not a good idea. So I guess on that note, right, obviously you've been in e-commerce for some time. So if you could go back in time to before you got started within the e-commerce ecosystem, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I think that when I think of the first e-commerce launch that I did, I heavily underestimated the cost of growth. Like across the board, I underestimated the cost of shipping. I underestimated the cost of inventory. I underestimated the cost of paid ads. I think that was a huge learning curve for me, and a really painful one, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're constantly running out of money, or you're feeling like maybe you can't grow or scale because you don't have access to the cash that you need to be able to fund, Meta and Google that month. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I would say is like, make sure that like you really know those costs. Make sure that you pad yourself, because it's going to be more expensive than you probably think. And I'd rather have the flexibility, especially in D2C, to front load. Like if the going is good on Meta, you don't want to have to stop because like you ran out of budget that month and you need to wait until next month. You want to be able to like pull forward your budget, because why stop when it's going really, really well? So that's what I would say. Assume you need more and make sure that you have like a good budget.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always going to cost more. It's always going to take more time. Those things are super, super important. And yeah, I mean, it's cash flow is king, especially in any e-com business.
Yeah. And the second thing I would say is like, make sure you find great people. Like, it does not take 90 days for you to know if you're dealing with someone who is talented and actually knows what they are doing. This
Yes.
whole thing of like, it takes time and the algorithms take time. Like, no, it doesn't take time. We have an immediate feedback loop. And within 48 hours to 72 hours, like, we know. Don't let anybody tell you that like you need more time, because they're just basically stalling on themselves, basically, in their performance.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I mean, people are just, yeah, like I see that just too often in this industry where like agencies will take on like lower paying clients and they put like an intern on there. It's like, yeah, it takes time. It's like, well, they're learning on someone else's dime. It's not really like, a good business model like at all. It's good for the agency, but it's not good for the, founder, and they just don't care. So it's really bad.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And I went through that phase, especially in my early days, like 2015. I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I can, like, within, a conversation, tell you who's legit and who's not. But you learn that by doing. But yes, like, you really need to make sure that you have the right people, because having a team of like weapons, or ninjas, as I call them, even though I shouldn't call anyone a weapon or a ninja, is game changing. To have people that are really and truly operating at like the highest level. And that's also, maybe the third piece of advice. And I know you asked for one and I'm giving three. I talk a lot. I would also say that try to really just align with specialists and subspecialists. Like, in this world of D2C, you don't want to have a jack of all trades. You want to have someone that only does X or only does Y and is like highly skilled at that. And then you need to make sure that you can like orchestrate it all, right? That you can ensure that like there's a baton that's being passed from like one jockey to the next, but all of them have to be jockeys in like their own arena.
Yeah, but yeah, it's really good advice. So, somebody watching this wanted to reach out or wanted to find your course, what's the best way for somebody to get in contact?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, Marissa Rodriguez. They can go to throughexperience.com. My business is called Through Experience because I was like, I just want to talk about what I know through experience. Like, I have lived this, I have done this. They can reach out, and send an email, info@throughexperience.com, or reach out personally to me on LinkedIn.
So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I know I talked a lot.